Hello.
Welcome back to Video Drones. I'm Hannah.
I'm Nick.
And we are bringing you a little slasher palooza experience today. Because we've reviewed the new slasher film, X. And we're also going to give our top 10 each. Films that do fit the slasher category, but we think are sort of a bit better than your average sort of... Yeah.
And ones you probably haven't seen or might not have seen before.
Some that I thought up that weren't on any lists either, so I'm like rubbing my little hands about those ones.
So X has an interesting cast. Mia Goth, who was in Nymphomaniac, A Cure for Wellness, The Survivalist, which was quite an underrated film, and Suspiria remake as well, which was very good, I thought. Not really remake, but just sort of takes things from the original and runs with it. And Kid Cudi is in it, who's
great.
Yeah, he's been acting a lot more recently. He was in Don't Look Up recently, and he was in the TV series We Are Who We Are by Luca Guadagnino, who also directed the Suspiria remake.
He's an amazing creator, absolutely.
And he was in Westworld as well.
Oh, who was he in Westworld?
Francis.
Oh. Oh, I wish I'd known that it was Kid Cudi.
I kind of gave up on that series.
Yeah, the first season, amazing. Second season, third season, oh man, really? Yeah, it just kind of petered out there, but that first season was very, very good.
Have you seen the original movie?
Yes, I have.
Ah, that's pretty interesting.
I quite liked it. Yeah, and so it's a really interesting concept, and we're not really that far off, probably. Theoretically, we've already got sex robots and such the like, so...
Yeah. And Martin Henderson was in X, playing quite a sort of funny role. And as New Zealanders, we know him from Neighbours and Home and Away, but he was also in...
Those are Aussie shows.
Oh, no, no, sorry. Shortland Street. Yeah, he was in Shortland Street. And
That's
Home and
our
Away.
soap. We have like one soap in New Zealand.
I'm not a
Shortland
big soap
Street.
person, although I did used to watch it a little bit when I was younger. Just, I don't know why. But he was in The Ring, American remake too, which was very good. I thought the Gore Verbinski film.
He's looking fantastic. It's crazy to think. Like he's
it's
just
so bizarre.
And he was really buff as well. Like he was all like massively worked out. They had a shirtless scene just so you could see how much work he'd done. He's just it's quite amazing to think. Like
it's funny we're talking about aging when this film is all about aging.
The horror, the fear of aging, being what's that like? Being confronted with youth and beauty. You know, it's quite.
I can see why it's become something that would be used in a film, because millennials are probably terrified of aging. If you look at everything like plastic surgery that young people are getting these days.
Scream outs.
There's a millennial screaming.
No, our youth. Yeah, I mean we're both in our 40s now, but it's not something that really bothers us so much.
40s.
Yeah. I think it was far naughtier. Younger, more like chill 40s, but But I don't know, it's not something that I worry about too much. I mean, aging, I've been prepared for that to happen to me for a very long time. I've had 40 years to get used to it, more or less. So, not something that really bothers me, but definitely freaks out quite a lot of people.
And it is something that's sort of becoming part of the culture now, because there was the film Old, which we really, really enjoyed. We rewatched it last week.
Willingly rewatched that one,
And it's been quite unfairly maligned with the reviews that it's getting. The rating on IMDb is like 5 point something.
What?
I know, it should be far higher than that.
It's a really fun movie, and it really much more creatively sort of as a themes of aging. And I mean they've got little children that's rapidly aging. That's quite a horrifying concept, I think, as a parent. like you sort of 1 minute, they're still the same age inside mentally, but their bodies have changed, and that was I was quite like, oh, that would be really hard to deal with as a parent.
And that film uses body horror as well, which we love. I mean, that's maybe one of our favourite horror genres. Slashers really aren't our favourites.
Yeah, they're really not. We love horror. We are obsessed with horror, but funnily enough, slasher films,
I don't hate them or anything.
I don't hate them.
But I just find them a bit boring compared to like body horror or more like supernatural horror, things like that.
We were sort of saying that a lot of the time slashers, they just kill for no real good reason. They're just sort of running around and slashing people up. So, but I've got to say, X did have some sort of like, some concept behind why they were being
It did,
so
but I
numerous.
just thought with the ratings before I saw it that it was going to have some crazy postmodern twist or something, but it was just a slasher with old people, basically.
yes, that was another thing I was quite disappointed in. Like, from the reviews and all the hype, I assumed that it would be something quite new and different, but kept waiting for that twist, There's no
like
real
Cabin
twist.
in the Woods or something. I think,
Yeah,
you know?
just something that really sort of like really visceral, something that sort of make you wow, wow, they've really reinvented the slasher genre. But I mean, I think it's more paying homage to the slasher genre.
Which is what he does, Ty West always does as a director. I mean, he did House of the Devil, which is very sort of retro, Cabin Fever 2, which is another...
It's so bad.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny though. Yeah, it's gross.
The second one?
Cabin Fever, yeah, it's just gross. It's just really gross.
You mean his one, second one, or the first one?
The first one is quite good,
bad.
really. Well, it's kind of good in that, like, the body horror aspects, there. Like,
I like Eli Roth, and that was his first big film.
I kind of like that film. It's disgusting, but there's something I like about it.
I like all of his films. They're sort of B horror movies, really. They're bad,
They're bad.
but I think Hostel is actually quite good. I like the two Hostel films quite a lot. I mean, he's a big sort of cinephile and horror cinephile, and there's a lot of sort of not just references, but sort of influences and things in his films that make him a cut above the rest, I think.
Definitely.
And he's done that new shark documentary, which looks really interesting. I mean, he seems like a nice person who's sort of, sort of conscious of those things.
Yes. So yeah, the Cabin Fever 2 was it was a lot more low budget, and it was just lots of gore.
I can't remember it.
Yeah.
But yeah, he sort of does these retro things. He's definitely a horror director. I mean, he did an episode of Wayward Pines, which isn't really horror, is it?
Oh, it's kind
Sort
of.
Mystery,
not really though. More mystery,
horror.
Yeah.
He did an episode of The Exorcist TV series, which was I didn't like it very much. I'm a huge fan of the original and part 3 and everything except for part 2, the Exorcist movies, really. But he did 2 episodes of Them.
Oh, now Them! If you haven't seen Them, oh my goodness, it is the most brutal show I've ever seen on television. There's some scenes in there that are like top tier horror moments. Very, very disturbing. Quite surprised that it got past the censors, but my God, the acting is fantastic.
Everything's good. I don't know why it didn't get more coverage.
Yeah, well, I think some African American people felt that it was sort of exploiting like the trauma of black folks and racism. So I respect that. But I actually kind of had some Twitter interaction with one of the main actresses, and she seemed pretty happy that I was allowed to say that I loved it as a white person. But someone who loves horror,
that's the whole point, that it's exploiting the horror of like black people. I mean, it's directed by an African American. It's supposed to be that. It's like it's kind of PC gone mad, really, if they have something against it, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I got to respect the way the African American people feel, but the actors were African American, and I think that they wanted to be part of this project because they really believed in it. And to me, you can never really be reminded enough how unfair things have been over history, and especially, it's just recently, it's the 50s, sort of, it's the segregation, and things haven't really progressed that much. But I just adored that season. It's only had 1 season, but it's just jaw-dropping. Such a good show.
Totally agree. So yeah, he's a horror director. He's got a new film called Pearl coming out with Mia Goth. Again, I don't really know what it's about or anything. But he's just, he's a sort of an average director. I've never loved anything that he's done. House of the Devil is easily my favourite thing. He did The Sacrament as well, which you haven't seen yet, but it's sort of a horror film about a cult.
Is it the one with the vines and the roots and sort of like there's a chapel with...
It's like the Jim Jones.
No, I haven't seen that. I am looking forward to that. I love my cult sort of anything
similar
to do with cults.
Jim Jones.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it had a really good cast. Who was the lady, the blonde lady? Do you remember? I've seen her in something before.
No, I don't remember her. Maybe Brittany Snow is her name, I think. But and she was in like Prom Night remake or something like that. But she's not someone that I know very well.
I mean, I knew instantly it was shot in New Zealand because there's this scene of these macrocarpa trees, this macrocarpa kind of hedge, and I'm like, yeah, that's New Zealand, and it is shot in New Zealand.
Somewhere near Wellington, I think. Yeah,
that would make sense. Yeah, the sort of blown sideways because it can be so windy in that area. So yeah, there's this really sort of atypical, typical Wellington trees being blown halfway over. struggling against the wind. So straight away I was like, yeah, that's New Zealand. That's nowhere else. So that was pretty cool that it was shot in New Zealand.
Yeah.
I mean, we've certainly got some lovely light here, which made the cinematography quite gorgeous. And it did feel like it was set more in America, though. They managed to achieve that quite well. Yeah, it wasn't sort of bashing you over the head with Kiwiisms or anything like that. No. There's some really beautiful moments of cinematography.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few moments where there's a sort of sex scene in the barn, and that's kind of beautiful, really. Was it in the barn or maybe it was in the house? But there's a shot with Mia Goth sort of looking over his shoulder and the light's all radiant, and I thought that was quite beautiful.
His films, I mean, you know, they're, like we were saying, they're kind of throwbacks to 70s slasher films, so he kind of goes for that sort of look, and his films always look really good. I'd say really good, but not like amazing or anything. Yeah,
not to the point where I was like, oh my god, this is amazing, but I was like, yeah, that's really quite beautiful. And but I just didn't feel like it was a complete story. I didn't think it was very well fleshed out. There was nothing really exciting. I thought all the acting was really good, as good as it could be within the subject matter, but kind of a bit silly.
It was quite cartoonish.
It's quite cartoonish.
Which slashers are, though, really. I mean,
well, some of them are quite scary, though, but this one wasn't really,
They're usually cartoonish in the first, so the first third of the film was set during daylight, and that's when you get introduced to the characters, and that's where the jokes are, mainly. And then when night comes, it usually, they start getting killed off, and things get a lot darker, literally and figuratively. But yeah, I'm just not a big slasher fan, really.
But if you love slashers, you probably really love this. It is a very solid entry in the slasher genre. I mean, it's very much, he knows his stuff when it comes to horror and slashers, and that's liberally applied to this. So, but it's just not, nothing groundbreaking for me, nothing really like, wow. So, I don't know. I was really wanting to like it, but I was quite nah. Sorry.
What would you give it out of 5?
2. As being generous. 2 out of 5 for me would be pretty generous.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 2.5 just for the technical.
The teamwork, they've obviously got a good team that they're working with. No shade for those guys. Like, I mean, it had all the right ingredients. It just, it wasn't something that I went, oh wow, this is revolutionary. I was like, it's okay. But if you love slashers, you'll probably love this, I'd say.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's good to sort of have a commentary on the obsession with youth and beauty and sexuality and what happens when you don't have that anymore. You know, and your partner's too old to kind of lay it on you. And
the best scenes in it, in my opinion, were where finally the old people had sex. It was quite funny.
That's right.
That was good. Unintentionally funny. I don't know if it was supposed to be funny.
It was a bit too funny for me. It wasn't really that dark. But and there was some I got to mention they really did refer to some Jello moments.
I love Jello films. And for me, the whole Italian Jello genre is kind of like taking slasher and making it more interesting, more creative, really. Yeah.
So we will give it 4.5 stars out of 10 hearts.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, I don't know what all the fuss is about. Sorry.
Especially for an A24 film, I thought it was that's why I thought it would be better, and the ratings. But anyway.
Moving on, we are going to share with you the films that we have dug around and found and liked and loved that do fit. So slasher films, the rules kind of are pretty much, it needs to be like a human enemy, or at least was once human. I think Freddy from Nightmare on Elm Street, he was a human. There's lots of stalking going on, so there needs to be that stalking element, so you can't really have like a alien or something like that.
And you can definitely include Freddy, because it's usually someone who has been
wronged.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there's a bit of a backstory about making things right, like someone was teased at a camp, so they kill everybody, So there's and there has to be slashing, like as in like knives. It doesn't need to be all murders are made with
some
knives,
blades.
but blades. Sorry, blades. Blades are really important when it comes to slasher.
Because I've got one on my list which I'll talk about that's not exactly a knife. Well, I think it does have some knives. Anyway.
So should we launch into it?
So we're going to do 10 films each, so there'll be 20 films all up. And do you want to go first?
Right. Well, in no particular order. If you haven't seen it, or you haven't seen it recently, Psycho, 1960. I love Psycho. I mean,
it's responsible for the whole modern horror film, really.
It really, really is. And it is that good. It stands up so well. Just freaking wow. I got really into it when I was in my teens. I actually did a scene from the very end of Psycho in film class. I don't know if you were there that day.
No, I can't remember it.
I sort of replicated that final scene where it's like, I would never even hurt a fly. It was it's so good. It's Hitchcock. It's amazing, and it just stands up so well. I kind of worried that it would lose that edge, but it doesn't. And so if you haven't seen black and white films, or you think they might be a bit slow, or you're not too sure, this is really worth a visit because it is that good. Okay, the next one is Cabin in the Woods. That was from 2012. That is so much fun.
I can't remember it being a slasher, though. Is it really?
It does have stalking and slashing.
Okay.
There is some bladed weapons. It's kind of a nod to all horror. It's like the typical kids go to a cabin, stuff starts happening, moiders and things. It's a really fun, really clever take on, and kind of dissects horror films and makes fun of it. I think it's great, yeah, but there is some stalking, there is some blades in there somewhere. It's a little bit of everything for everyone, and it's also quite fun, though I think some people might find it disturbing, so it's not like it's a PG rated thing. Okay, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974, the original one. I am a big fan of the original. I think it's really raw. I think a lot of the elements in X came from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I saw a lot of kind of parallels.
That was the biggest influence, definitely.
I think so. The original one it's very raw, it's very brutal, but man, it's got some cool practical effects and these disgusting homes that are sort of littered with bones and things. It's very Ed Gein. I really like that. Yeah.
X even replicated that shot with Mia Goth when she was sort of walking up to the house, shot from behind. A lot of films have done that.
Yeah, I rate the 1974 Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I think it's great.
Toby Hooper, he's great.
Sorry.
Was great.
Yeah, a lot of fun, that one. Well, it's very dark also, so please, if I'm saying these are fun, yeah, don't...
Slashers are going to be R18s.
Yeah, they are.
Unless they're shit.
It is disturbing to some people, but some people would say it's also a reflection of on the meat industry and how animals are killed to be eaten and blah, blah, blah. So there's you can see it like that. It's like maybe it will make you go vegan. Like there was one quite famous director, I think Quentin Tarantino said it made him go vegan, or someone said that. Then we've got Cruising, which we've mentioned in other videos, which is a Friedkin film that is was filmed in 1980, and it's got Al Pacino as an undercover cop in a gay club chasing down a serial killer. Boy, it's good. So good.
It's almost not a horror. I mean, it's sort of Al Pacino, it's more of a drama, sort of horror or something.
But there's stalking
Thriller.
and there's knives.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it's very loosely based on a true story. We've actually talked about that before. We talked about Friedkin. So it's really interesting that Friedkin directed this, because the guy that the whole movie's about was actually an extra. Well, he actually is.
Well, he was in The Exorcist as a medical assistant when they were doing all those tests on Reagan. And he had a couple of lines. He seemed like a nice guy.
He did. That's
even
nuts.
Mindhunter referenced him in season 2.
So that's kind of trippy in of itself. It's crazy that he made a movie about that guy, but that's very, very interesting. And then we've got Maniac 2012, which has the lovely Elijah Wood as a complete psycho.
He produced it too, like he does with a lot of Spectre Vision films, his kind of company.
Oh, he's great. I loved him in Come to Daddy as well. I think he's fantastic. I'm so glad that he's sort of doing these darker, more challenging roles. That one borrows heavily from movies like Psycho. It's the classic slasher. It looks gorgeous. This one's very kind of like, if you like kind of arty, beautiful horror with the slasher stuff involved, highly recommend. It's a
remake of the early 80s film, and I like the original one, but I prefer the remake. It's just the kills are even more over the top, and it's sort of more jello, actually.
It is. Yes, before I knew what that word was. I agree, yes.
He's obviously a fan, and he probably wanted to sort of ramp up those elements.
Very stylish, gorgeous, very disturbing. It has some incest, sort of almost incesty stuff going on. It's quite gross. But yeah, very, very cool entry on this list. Then we've got Wes Craven's New Nightmare, which was in 1994.
I love that film.
Oh, I wasn't expecting it to be so good, but it just amps up the meta-verse stuff that Craven really brought into existence. wow, what a film. I absolutely loved it. I didn't expect to love it so much, but it's probably my favourite.
Yeah, I see it definitely as like a precursor to Scream. It was sort of had the same look and the whole postmodern kind of self-reflexive thing that was happening there.
Oh, it's
I
so
saw it at the
clever.
movies actually when it came out. I won 25 tickets to it from RDU and went with all my friends. It was so fun.
It's great. It's so good. If you don't want to watch any of the Friday the 13th, what are they called? Nightmare on Elm Street. If you don't want to watch them and you think, I don't know about this is for me, just at least watch.
That'll get you into them, I think.
Yeah, I think that one's a really accessible one and just fantastic. The practical effects and the imagination and the meta-ness of it all is just fantastic. And this is one I haven't seen on many lists, but Battle Royale from 2000 by Kenji
Not a traditional
Fukasaku.
slasher.
But there's stalking, there's lots of blades. It's like multiple slasher kind of stuff going on. Absolutely amazing film. One of my favorites. What is it called? There's a movie with...
Lord of the Flies?
No, not Lord of the Flies. There's a movie that got really famous and it basically rips off Battle Royale. It's The Hunger Games. The Hunger Games is a massive rip-off of Battle Royale, which is also a manga. And the manga is fantastic. It's very brutal. But, oh my goodness, if you haven't seen Battle Royale, please watch it. It is
I love it.
Amazing, super violent.
One of Tarantino's favourite films, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's pretty good taste. I love it. We actually watched it
I like
together.
his taste a lot more than his films.
Yeah, that's the thing. We like his taste more than his films. We actually saw that together maybe 10 or so, maybe more, 12 years ago, and we met up again. We watched that together, and I was so happy that I found someone else who loved it and loved the manga as well. So big. That's just probably my favourite on the list, which is a big call. But Battle Royale, fantastic. Then we've got Ravenous from 1999.
Great film. I kind of wouldn't call it a slasher, though. But
there are blades, and there is stalking.
But my thing is that the intention for killing is to eat them. It's a cannibal film. The intention with slashers is just to kill them, like they're pieces of meat, really, not to eat, but they're just to kill them. And it's a bit different. I mean, it is
a bit different.
I mean, I guess I'm saying that because I really, really love that film, and I would say that it's sort of above the slasher genre, really.
It's so underrated, and I don't know why people weren't so. I loved it the first time I saw it. I've loved it on repeat viewings. Boy, what an amazing cast! Very tense, and it's got this really dark humor running through it. That's just bang on, just perfect.
Great score too by Michael Nyman.
The score is so good,
and that guy from Blur.
But
the parts that I like about it are definitely Nyman.
Yes.
Who did all those great scores with Peter Greenaway's films.
But if you're feeling bloodthirsty, you want to watch a bloodthirsty film, you're like, I want to see the blood. And that's a very clever and just amazing all-round film. I just love that.
There's David Arquette from the Scream movies as well.
And he's just such a light and sweet character. It's just this ruthless dark humour. I adore it. And then we've got Behind the Mask, The Rise of Leslie Vernon. That's from 2006. You haven't seen that. I don't know if you'd like it because it's a little bit kind of not fun. It's really.
I don't like fun films.
Yeah, well, no, it's kind.
But it's kind of true. I like dark horrors.
I don't know if it would be the humour would be dark. Oh, it's quite dark. It is quite dark. It's basically this documentary crew are following around a serial killer and finding out how he does it, how he.
I don't like
victims.
sort of documentary found footage things either.
No.
But,
it's like a documentary about a serial killer and how he goes about his business. And how he does what he does and how he can be in two places at once. And it's such a clever investigation of that kind of genre of not just sort of slasher films, but also serial killers. It's very, it's dark, but it's really fun and it has a very, very satisfying ending. So I would highly recommend you check that out if you like slasher films because it's like the behind the scenes, what they do. It's actually quite clever. I was quite impressed with how they handled the subject material. And then we've got The Den. It's also known as Hacked. From 2013. This is about, I don't know if you've heard of Omegle or Chat Roulette. It's about kind of a quite sort of smug student who's studying for her thesis or whatever, and she's looking at how people behave online, and she ends up getting drawn into these sort of real murders, and it starts to affect her. It's mainly shot through like a webcam, so like through the she's on the laptop and you see everything that way. There's a little bit of security footage, security camera footage. I really liked it. I thought it was very tense. It was really unsettling. I think this one actually kind of got to me more than most films. there was something very raw and real about it, and very clever use of static mediums, like, you know, the way that they shot it and what they used for them. Really, really good entry, and pretty underrated in my opinion. I don't think it got much attention, but I thought that was a really, really, really interesting part of the addition to this kind of family of films. And then we've got The Collector,
which I introduced you to.
You did. Yeah, I was always a bit scared to see it because I don't really like torture porn much. It's not really my jam.
It's not as, you know, it's not like a Serbian film or anything like that.
Actually, I haven't seen either. But it's from 2009, and there's a sequel that was probably even better than the first. It's like, okay, so you know how
they're currently making a new one as well.
Yes,
called The Collected.
The Collected. So basically, when I saw it, I thought, you know what? This is like if Kevin from Home Alone grew up and decided to not just sort of stop robbers in their tracks, but actually murder people and lots of people. Very clever, inventive little traps and things like that too.
Gadgets.
Lots of gadgets. So yeah, so that's all I could think about was like, is this Kevin growing up from Home Alone? Probably one of the more disturbing ones on my list. It is
He's
disturbing.
the guy that directed them. I think it's Darren Lynn Bousman. He directed some of the Saw movies, like parts 4 and 5 or something like that. And he maybe wrote some as well. So yeah, he does come from that. But I think these films are a bit more creative than the Saw ones.
Totally. Yeah. So that's my top 10. Oh, but also Candyman, but Nick's going to talk about that. I do like the 2021 version by Nia DaCosta. I thought it was brilliant, and I was like, I just wish there was a creature like this that came after all the shitty white people that are just being absolute dicks. And I thought it was great, beautiful, loved it.
Didn't like it as much as you, but I still liked it. But I was a bit disappointed because I was expecting more, I think.
See, I hit all the right notes for me. I love it. I think it's really, really fantastic film, and I'm really looking forward to seeing anything else she does. She's a fantastic director.
Wow. So if you can't guess from my t-shirt, I'm a big Dario Argento fan, and if I could include Suspiria, I would, but it does have some slasher kind of kills in it, but I think it's more of a supernatural horror, really, witchy kind of horror. It's something different, really. That's why it's so good. It's sort of quite original in its genre.
We both love it so much.
Big fan. But I thought that I'd put Tenebrae, his 1982 film, which is a giallo film, but it's sort of the genre of giallo had kind of petered out by that point. So it was really a mid-70s phenomenon, or even early 70s. But this is a very late entry in that. But I love it. It's like one of my favorite of his films after Suspiria, and yeah, some very crazy dubs as well. I mean, that's the great thing about giallo for non-Italian viewers. You get these great English dubs that are just quite cheesy themselves. And yeah, and this one has a dub for the actor who is played by Daria Nicolodi, who wrote Suspiria and was Dario Argento's wife. The dub is by Teresa Russell, who was the wife of Nicholas Roeg, who did Don't Look Now and Eureka. And,
Man Who Fell to Earth?
Yeah, The Man Who Fell to Earth.
Yeah, what a great film that one is.
So a weird sort of connection with the wives of these directors there. And Teresa Russell has such an amazing sort of voice, such a lazy sounding voice, but it's quite sort of, there's something very dreamy and erotic about it. And yeah, second, I would choose Candyman, the original Candyman. It's just, so
good.
Like, every time I watch it, I'm quite surprised at how different it was to things being made at the time. It's just quite sort of, like, the things that she goes through are so kind of intense, really. And it's got a great score by, what's his name?
Marconi?
No, I usually don't like him. He's that.
Oh, Philip Glass?
Yeah, Philip Glass.
Yeah. It's the one really good original thing that Philip Glass has done. Yeah.
It's more of like a lullaby or a music box kind of score. I just find
iconic.
He's really into these sort of rhythmic things that go dun 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 dun, and they sort of great as well. I mean, Michael Nyman does that a little bit as well. He's sort of a minimalist composer in some ways, but but yeah, that film is just incredible. It was directed, maybe this is why it is quite different from other horror films. It was directed by Bernard Rose, this English director. He brought to it sort of an English sensibility, and he doesn't usually do horror films, although he might have done like a remake of Frankenstein later, I think.
I think it's also got the best like origin revenge story out of all of these, like just the most well constructed, the most affecting, the most like, yeah, damn straight these people were getting their comeuppance. Like I think that origin story of Candyman is the best.
And it's based on a novella by Clive Barker.
Another
Brit.
Yeah.
Well. So number 3 is Torso by Sergio Martino. Now it's been a while since I've seen that, so I can't really speak about much in it, but it was great. It was a film that I discovered again through Quentin Tarantino. Like he does actually, like I mean, his early 90s films are pretty good, but his more recent films, I really don't like them. They're just so theatrical and kind of silly. I kind of gave up at Inglourious Bastards onwards, really. But I'll still see everything he made, and I do think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was a lot better than anything he's done for a while. But yeah, he loved Torso, and it's another giallo film from 1973, and again has those funny dubs as well, and some great kills. And number 4, I'd put. I had to include one of the Nightmare on Elm Street films, and this is part 3, Dream Warriors. Which I easily think is the best.
Is it one with Trish Arquette?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's
very
so
young
good.
Trish Arquette.
Oh, so gorgeous.
Yeah, it's great. It's really, really good. It's directed by Chuck Russell, who did the Blob remake, and what was it called? Sort of a film. I think Kim Basinger was in it. It was like a religious horror in the 90s. He's sort of a horror director, and it was. Written by, it was the only other film apart from New Nightmare, which you had on your list, that Wes Craven actually had anything to do with, and because he wrote an early draft of the script, and his friend Frank Darabont, who did The Mist, and
The Mist is so good.
Yeah, and he did all those other Stephen King things like what are those other films? The sort of lighter ones, like the real famous one, Seven Prisons.
Oh, Shawshank Redemption.
Yep. Yep, that one, and there was another one.
Oh, the one with the man who soaks up people's pain or something.
Something like
the
that.
Green Mile.
Yes,
the Green Mile. Good scripts.
A lot of people love those films. They're just not really my thing. But
yeah, I like the Green Mile more than I like Shawshank Redemption. But I do love who's in that? Morgan Freeman is in the Shawshank Redemption, and Tim Robbins, which are
great
fantastic.
actors.
Yeah, I love a bit of Freeman.
So Darabont also had a hand in writing it. You'd almost think Too Many Cooks in the Kitchen
Too Many Cooks
would sort of disturb the quality of the film, but Bruce Wagner also wrote it. A draft of the script had a hand in it. He wrote Maps to the Stars, Cronenberg's not really recent, but sort of last film, before Crimes of the Future, which we're very excited about coming out the next month. We'll definitely be reviewing that one.
Oh, yes. Cronenberg's new film, oh my goodness.
So Bruce Wagner, he also wrote, not Wayward Pines, but that 90s sort of Wild Palms, which is sort of...
I really want to see that.
It's good.
Really good.
It's good. He's got a really interesting mind. So anyway, all these people combined to write the screenplay for Nightmare on Elm Street 3, and it's just made so well, and apparently it was a real bitch to make because the director pushed actors way further than they were used to on previous films, and they found it really taxing. But yeah, it's a great film.
So good.
The effects are lovely in that one.
Yeah, peak practical effects era time too, and so good, so imaginative.
Yeah. So the next one is a Spanish horror called Pieces, and that was one that I found out about from Eli Roth, and it's quite in line with his sensibilities, but it's quite a sort of an exploitation sort of slasher, Some classic English dubs in it that are just so over the top. It's almost like a Spanish Jello or something, set in a high school.
I haven't seen some of these.
I think we started watching it, but you were doing stuff on your phone, maybe.
Story of my life.
So that's really good. The kills are really over the top. I mean, they're really, really creative and just kind of funny in a way, but the humour is really sort of black humour, which I like a lot. Peeping Tom is number 6, and that is almost like the British equivalent of Psycho.
So like voyeuristic and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, they both came out in 1960, but this one is, so I don't know if they copied each other or what went on, but
it was just in the human psyche to create these things.
But they were both very new and way more sort of, they upped the ante of like what you could get away with in horror films, really. I mean, I feel like horror films before those two films were quite naive in a lot of ways, but these really kicked off the modern slasher. And this one, like Psycho, it was directed by someone who didn't usually do horror films. This was Michael Powell, who usually had directed films as part of a duo with Emmerich Pressburger. Really, really good sort of British film set during the war. He did Black Narcissus.
Oh wow!
As well, which is one of my favorite.
Okay, I've got to see it. I've got to see Peeping Tom. It sounds great.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. Like the cinematography is just gorgeous, and it's all sort of about perversion, which is the same thing with Psycho as well. But this guy is like a cinematographer, and he kind of kills with his camera. Because there's this big sort of knife that sticks out of it. That
what?
Yeah, like I won't give too much away, but it's really, really good.
Wow, cool.
I thoroughly recommend seeing that one. The next one is Stage Fright, and this is by Michele Soavi. He's an Italian director who I think I like him nearly as much as Dario Argento, which is a big call.
That's a bit cool.
And he was Dario Argento's first assistant director on 2 or 3 of his films, and those films which he helped with just look so much better than Dario's other films. So like he obviously he has a lot of taste and a lot of like he did Delamore, that Cemetery Man film.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
cool.
he's so inventive. He's almost like the British Terry Gilliam, and just how his mind works.
Terry is British.
Oh, Italian, sorry.
Italian?
Yeah, the Italian.
Wow, cool.
Just at least Cemetery Man is just like so kind of...
It's a really unique film.
Yeah.
Yeah,
really
totally
really cool.
unique.
He did one about a cult as well, called The Sect, La Setta, which is really, really cool.
I'll have to see that.
Yeah, we should definitely watch that. And he did one called The Church as well, which was produced by Dario Argento.
Wow, cool, nice.
But yeah, Stage Fright is set in like a sort of on stage, like theatre company, and it's sort of like someone amongst them has gone mad and is wearing this big like owl's mask and killing people like that. It sounds really, really weird, and it is really weird. But it was his first film, and it was so good. Yeah.
Oh,
you can even watch that tonight.
Oh, I have to do. That sounds awesome.
Really,
was it
really
87?
It's 87.
Wow, very cool. I love Spanish films. Oh, they're so good. Yeah.
And next is quite a controversial one to include. It's the remake of Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
but not the recent remake, which was just.
There are so many. There are so many remakes, but it's just the remake in that it's like just called Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And it's got Jessica Biel in it. That guy Jonathan, I've forgotten his last name. The one with the glasses. If you look it up, he's a good actor. He was in The Ruins.
Yeah, well. That's a great film, man. I'd never heard of it.
Very underrated.
Very, very underrated. Yeah, he's a good actor. He's great in this role, actually.
Yeah, he is.
I approve of this, by the way. I thought this was a great. This is the only really remake, the only one associated with Texas Chainsaw that I think is damn freaking good.
The issues at the time when it came out with the film were that it went overboard and was too dark and too like intense, which that's why I like it. I mean, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Yeah, that's what you should be aiming for.
Yeah, it's supposed to be dark and brutal and people getting treated like cattle, basically.
Yeah,
and
the reviews all said it was too cruel. really, which is, you know, I mean, those films are supposed to be.
That's what they're all about. I mean, killing animals is cruel too. So
it was produced by Michael Bay, and I mean, he does a lot of shitty films, but this one I really liked, and it was directed by Markus Nispel, who's a Austrian German director who does lots of music videos, and you can definitely see that in just the look of the film. It has like a real kind of, it almost feels like a hangover from those 90s music videos. There's very nihilistic kind of ones, sort of like new metal and like grunge videos and stuff, which I'm not into new metal at all. I find it way too much. And grunge, I feel like only the first sort of wave of bands like Nirvana and things were actually very good.
It's quite
Pearl
glossy.
Jam I hate.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah,
so much.
I can't believe they consider grunge. Nick told me that
he's responsible for all those horrible sort of crooning fuckers like Creed and like Live, or all those sort of bands.
I didn't know it was considered grunge. I was like, that's not right. That's not right. That's not grunge. It's like, yeah, some bands get called punk, and you're like, no, they're not. They're really not punk. What are you talking about?
So sorry for the diversion.
But it's glossy. It's quite glossy looking. It's quite beautiful.
It's very sepia.
Yes.
Which was a big thing in those 90s videos. But so and it was actually shot by the cinematographer who did the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, that's so cool.
Who just by chance happened to be the guy who had worked with Markus Nispel on all those music videos.
That's nuts. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it looks cool. I really, really enjoyed that one a lot more than I thought I would. I was quite chuffed that one exists.
Got the creepy kid from the Ring remake as well, who's really good. Yeah. So Maniac Cop is number 9. I really, really like that film. It's sort of a real... Oh, shit, we should watch that too. That's great. I mean, they have 3 Maniac Cop films from the 80s, or maybe 80s, late 80s, early 90s, and they're real sort of B-movie fear, like exploitation films as well. But they're quite funny, and they're quite full-on. They're sort of really intense, and it's currently being... A reboot is in the works. Not even in the works, I think it's currently being made by Nicholas Winding Refn, along with maybe Frank Calhoun, who did the Maniac remake.
Oh, that all should be good. Wow.
I'm sure it'll look amazing.
Ooh, that's something to look forward to. Gosh, wow.
I've been looking forward to it for a while, so maybe they're not currently making it, but it's like it's on IMDb, so there's something in production. So
damn, there's some good stuff coming out.
They've been saying that for 2 years now, though.
I bet Corona really did. Yeah, COVID changed a lot of things, didn't it?
So I recommend all of those Maniac Cop films. They're good. They sort of get a bit worse, but they're all pretty solid. And number 10 is another Dario Argento film, Opera, which has very creative kills in it. And it's one of the ones that Michel Soavi, who directed Stage Fright, he was the first assistant director, and he was responsible for the second unit footage, which is just beautiful in that film. It's set on a sort of similar to Stage Fright, which is set in a theatre company. This is in an opera company, so it's way bigger and more luscious. And there's Dario Argento, this is a bit of a spoiler, but his wife, Daria Nicolodi, gets killed by, she looks through a peephole, like a door hole, and someone shoots her like from ages away. I think they managed to get through the door or something. Like
and that's become such a trope, like quite a, it's even an X is like that whole key looking through a keyhole. Just generally don't look through keyholes. Just don't. Lessons we've learned from horror films: do not look through keyholes.
I wouldn't be surprised though if this was the first time.
I think it was the first time it was used. 87, so yeah, probably.
Dario's pretty inventive with his kills. Yeah. I mean, God, he even has killed his wife and his daughter in some pretty sick ways, actually.
He's a little bit, in real life, I think he's a little bit disturbed, just a little.
Yeah, he's a bit of a ghoul. Even looks like a ghoul.
Does look like a ghoul.
But yeah, it's a great film. It also has another sort of, when the killer is killing people, who I think Dario is actually the person that does a lot of the killing, because he always insists on all the shots where you see the killer's like black gloves, that's Dario Argento. So whenever the killer's doing that in his films, this woman who's the opera singer in the movie, she has to watch, and to keep her watching, all these needles are like taped on under her eyes going upwards. So if she closes her eyes, they're going to like puncture into her eyelids. And it's quite sort of,
Jeez,
and that happens, and blood starts dripping down, and it's quite an intense. It's quite beautiful image in a way, just like the eye with all these needles lined up. But it's pretty intense.
That's very inventive, isn't it? Crikey.
So yeah, those are my 10. I mean, a lot of those are probably not included on lots of slasher lists because they sort of go a bit outside the genre, but you know, like giallo films or whatever. But yeah, those are my ones that I watch.
Yeah, there were some that we really wanted to put in there, but they just don't fit it enough. I think these ones, most of them, like, are a hard yes. They are definitely slashers, and then the other ones are, yeah, come on.
I mean, Halloween is a great film. I'd probably include that, or Scream, or I Know What You Did Last Summer, which is a bit of a guilty pleasure. But they're just on so many lists. Yeah.
And I'm not actually a big fan of any of those, really. Not really.
I think Scream is pretty clever.
Yeah, when it first came out, I was like, this is pretty freaking cool, you know, like, it's that, yeah, very, like, self-reference.
They're a lot of fun to watch.
They're a lot of fun. But yeah, they're just not really, yeah, I mean, they're comedy.
They're a bit silly, yeah.
And they're really good for what they are, and I love Wes Craven,
yeah.
So, yeah, so that's us. Let us know what you think of our lists. Let us know if you watch one that you haven't seen before and what you think.
And let us know what your favourite slashers are.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting to know. Maybe you'll give us something that we haven't seen and then we can check it out. That'd be awesome. So have a lovely rest of your week.
And we'll see you next week for our review of The Card Counter.
Oh, yes.
By Paul Schrader.
Paul Schrader Fest. Coming right up.
We'll probably cover a few films from his earlier career as well.
Mm.
Films that are sort of similar to his like lonely man trope, which you see in you know, like Taxi Driver, obviously. Guy in the car, it's like that he's lonely.
He's a lonely
and he's a man.
He's a man.
So.
Yeah. Have a good weekend, everybody. Nice to see you. Thanks for coming. Bye.